Welcome to EPG Pathshala. Dear students, today we would be studying the module on the city and its region. Uh, the learning objectives would be the city in the context of its region, the definition, the scale, the interdependence between the city and its region, and the land utilization in the region. So, as we all know, or as we have to understand, that the city is dependent on its region, and the region is dependent on its city. It is a two-way process. When we look at the city in the context of its region, let us look at the definitions. Now, the city is surrounded by its hinterland or the region, which is defined, as we see the Oxford English Dictionary as it has defined the region, is an area, especially part of a country or the world, or it can be lower than that also, smaller than that also, smaller area, so which has a definable characteristics but not always fixed boundaries. And then McNeill has given another definition, which he has said that a strategic region is a strategic and political level of administration and policy making extending beyond the administrative boundaries of single urban local government authorities to include urban and or semi-urban hinterlands. So it is basically beyond the urban local government by the urban local body, that is beyond the city boundaries, the area which extends beyond it, and where there is also peri-urban developments. So those sort of, that area is a region. And then Chris Maida has said that region is an area having some characteristics that distinguish it from other areas. It is a territory of interest to people and for which one or more distinctive traits are used as the basis for its identity. It can be for a specific purpose, so it can be a region, it can be an industrial region where industries are operating, or it can be a resource region, eco-resource region where environmental resources are there, or it's characterized by that, or it can be an agroclimatic region. So there are various definitions. So now the term city region has been in use since about 1950 by urbanists, economists, urban planners, to mean a metropolitan area and a hinterland, but not necessarily having a shared administration. Typically, it denotes a city, conurbation, or urban zone with multiple administrative districts, but sharing resources like labor market, transport network, so that it functions as a single unit. Now, this figure, as you can see, it is the National Capital Territory of Delhi. It is surrounded by various states, part of various states. That means various few of the districts of these various states. There is part of Uttar Pradesh, part of Haryana, part of Rajasthan, and so Delhi is the focal point, which is the mega city. There are other metropolitan cities which are surrounding the mega city. Then there are other cities which are smaller than the metropolitan cities, and then there are networks, major roads, rivers, and that's how this is the region of the National Capital Region. And then we also find that the definition, it's also defined as UNIDO has given a definition, where it says that a city region is defined as the city and the surrounding suburbs that constitutes a coherent region as defined by the local authorities. So, city region is a geographic region that is known by the name of the city that is its center of economic development. As I said, like Delhi was the focal point, and city region is talking about, city region is that geographic region, it's known by the name of the city. So NCR, or the National Capital Region, is an example we can state for this definition. Then the city region is also defined as an area of interrelated activities, uh, interests, common organizations, brought about being through the medium of the routes which bind it to the urban centers. That means it is that area beyond the city, but it has links with the city. It can be the spatial linkages, that means roads, rail, corridors, which is running through the city towards the outside of the region, or from the city to beyond the city. Or so these are the spatial or the physical links, the networks. And also we have the functional linkages. That means the dependence of the city on the region and the region on the city. The commuters move from the region to the city. People are coming to the city from the region for various purposes, for work, for education, for healthcare. And from the city also people are now moving out, because many of the institutes, educational institutes, healthcare facilities are located in the region. So now people are also moving from the city to the region also. Now, what is the scale of this of the region? Now, district is an administrative unit, is many a times referred to as the region of the city. The region of a large city may be one district, or maybe even smaller than a district in case of medium and small towns. So, region of a large city also can be more than one districts, and small and medium towns would be less than a district. Now, region becomes larger when the city size, the size of the city increases. As you can see, that the National Capital Territory or the National Capital Region is about 50,000 square kilometers, vis-a-vis Kolkata, which is about 2,000 square kilometers. So it's not, now we mean, yes, definitely the region increases, the region becomes larger as the size of the city increases, but with the same, there may be instances where the population is the same, but the region of a city is more or is varying. Now this can be due to various reasons, due to the maybe the activities, the potential, the links. So various reasons can be there for this variation. Now coming to the interdependence and linkages. How is the city dependent or the region dependent on the city, or the city dependent on the region? We come to Lewis Mumford's book, The Culture of Cities. Now, Lewis Mumford was an American academician of repute, and he specialized or had interest in history, sociology. Then he was a literary critic, and from 1895 to 1990 was the span of his life, and he has written in his book The Culture of Cities, and he has stated that to define human areas one must seek not the periphery alone but the center, and for the center tends to focus the flow of energies, men and goods that passes through a region, concentrating them, dispersing them, diverting them, rerouting them. In short, exerting a close and controlling influence over the development of region as a dynamic reality. Like we say, city is a dynamic entity. It's always growing. Similarly, the region, it is also a dynamic entity because it is called always growing and interacting with the not only with the main city but also with the other cities, other other cities or towns or the villages or the rural settlements. When we look at the as I was discussing about the interdependence, that there's one is which is the spatial linkages and there's functional linkages. So now let us look at the dependence. We find that the cities, so it's a two-way process, as I had said. So city and its region are mutually interdependent. And they are mutually interlinked. And cities depend on the region for what? Cities depend on the region for food, for various products, for raw materials, then for labor, that people come to work to the city from the region. And the region depends on the city for various services, for facilities, for employment opportunities. So this is the interdependence, mutual interdependence, which we see in the city. Now, when we look at, if you see this figure, this is a conceptual figure of the types of linkages which takes place in the within a region. Now, what are the components of a region? We see that there is a large city, then there is this peri-urban development which is beyond the large city, then there are towns, there are small cities, then there are, as you can see in the legend, the central or the focal point is a large city. There are small cities, then there are towns, then there is peri-urban development along mainly the roads, and then there are rural settlements. Now, how many types of linkages can be there? You can see, so it is like a web. The linkages form like a web. For example, there is a link between the large city and the small city. Then there is a linkage between the large city and the villages, that is the rural settlements. People are coming from there also, from villages also, from cities also. Then there is also link between the towns, not necessary to the large city, but there is a linkages between the towns of the region. Then there is also linkages between the small cities within the region. Then there is a link between or the villages of the region, and then there's the linkages between the towns and the villages, and between the small city and the villages or the rural settlements, and then between the towns and the small cities. So there are various linkages which are happening within the region, and the region is constantly or region, we will say that it's also a dynamic entity, like we talk of a city, and there are these interactions which are taking place constantly within the region. Now, as I said earlier, the linkages can be both physical, that means in terms of transportation network, there can be roads, rails, airports, so those are the transportation network which connect the city to its region. It can be communication lines, which are telephone, internet. There can be transmission lines, that is the gas supply lines or the oil supply. So there are linkages which are physical linkages, and also there are linkages which are functional linkages. That means the city is dependent on the surrounding areas for the various requirements, as I said earlier. So the functional linkages are the ones, that is socio-cultural linkages, then economic linkages, and then political and administrative linkages. So in socio-cultural we have, that is for education and health facilities, then or entertainment and entertainment and recreation facilities. Then in economic linkages, we find that there are the regions are the sources of raw materials maybe, and then there are industries, then there are markets for finished goods, then some offices are sometimes there in the region. So there is also, and therefore the offices are there in the city also, and from the region people come to the offices in the city. The offices are also there in the region, and people commute from the city to the region. So these are linkages, these functional linkages. Then there are political and administrative as a part of these functional linkages. Also, as we can see that, as I have said earlier, that there is this, the city is dependent, maybe the food is coming from the milk, the food, I mean, food which will include the perishable as well as the non-perishable items. Uh, so that is coming from the region. So those are the, for various functions, the functional linkages are those, that means for various functions, the city is dependent or is linked with the region and vice versa. We come down to the components of the region. What does a region consist of? Now we see that a region consists of, it has various uses, and the uses in the region is termed, or the lands which are put to various uses is termed as land utilization of the region. And the land utilization of the region, we find that there are various cities, that is the urban settlements. Different size classes of cities and towns are there, which was shown in that concept drawing. Then there was various rural settlements, that is different size classes of villages or rural settlements. Then including the built up area, we have there's residential areas, there's non-residential areas. So the entire urban settlements are not built up. So the built up area is also part of the settlements. So we have, which includes the residential or where people live, and the non-residential areas. Then we have the regional networks and terminals, which is the roads, rail, air and water based. If there are any, depending upon some cities which have water based transportation also. So there's regional networks and terminals. Then there are nature reserves, which is or the natural reserves or natural resource areas, which are the water bodies, the forests, the environmentally sensitive areas. So they are part of the natural resources. Then there is land for production and economic activities. For example, the farmlands, the agriculture, the crop production areas. Then there are industrial areas for industrial activities, maybe the industrial estates. Then we have the fallow lands, which is unproductive land. Then we have the wasteland, which is the maybe saline land, gullied land, waterlogged land, barren areas. So those are the fallow lands, which are. We have another category which is the culturable fallow, that means fallow land, but still which can be taken up for production. But there's another category which is the fallow land, which cannot be used for production. So that is that category which comes under unproductive land. Now we come to the cities or the urban settlements, urban and rural settlements. Now, as I said earlier, that there are different size classes of cities and towns. So we see that the urban settlements, or let us start with the rural settlements first. We see that there are hamlets, which is less than 100. If you can see in the drawing, these are the settlement locations. The concentration of settlements. I mean, some parts of the region may have more settlements, some part of the region may have less settlements. The concentration of settlements. Then we have small villages, which are ranging from 100 to 199, 200 to 499, 500 to 999. Then we have medium villages, 1000 to 1999, then 2000 to nearly 3000, then large villages or census towns, 10,000 and above. So this is about the rural settlements. Now we come to the urban settlements, that means the cities and towns. We have small towns, as we know, these are all census classification. Small towns which are below 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 20,000. Then medium towns which are class 2 and 3 towns, 20,000 to 50,000. Then 50,000 to 1 lakh. Large cities, class 1 cities which are 1 lakh to 10 lakhs. Then we have the metropolitan cities which are more than 10 lakhs to about 50 lakhs, and then 50 lakhs to 100 lakhs. And then we have the mega city which is 100 lakhs and above. And if you, as you can see this drawing, it is the national capital region of Delhi, and where we are showing the settlement locations. Now we come to the regional networks and terminals. Now, as you can see, there are these expressways which are coming, the various expressways which cross the region, and where from the main city, that is the mega city of Delhi. So we have the road network, the railway network, and then we have the airports. So this is the about the networks and terminals. And then we have the built up area, which is the residential, non-residential areas, and or you can see the concentration of built up areas. Now we have the natural resource areas, which is the ridge. You can see the ridge, or the water bodies, the forests, environmentally sensitive areas. So these are mainly the hill areas, the forest areas, water bodies. Now we come to the agriculture, as I said, land for production and economic activities, the crop lands, and land for industrial activities. So we see that in near Bhiwadi, that is one of the areas, the industrial activities are there, and that is an industrial estate. So like that, there are areas, not only crop land, but industrial activity areas are also part of the land which is used for in the region. Then we have the fallow land, which is, as I said earlier, the fallow land, unproductive lands, wastelands. So this is as far as the land utilization is concerned. And when we see that the land utilization classification, it has been given, land utilization classification has been given by URDPFI in their guidelines, which is URDPFI is the Urban and Region Development Plan Formulation and Implementation Guidelines of 2014. We see that there are urbanizable zones, then new area zones, potential for urban development zones, then industrial zones, and we also see that there is also Survey of India. If you see the Survey of India maps, in the Survey of India maps of the region, there is this categorization of what I have discussed. That is, where are the hills, where are the forests, where are the water bodies, where are the rivers, where are the that means the water channels, where are the roads. So all this is also given in the Survey of India maps. And URDPFI guidelines has given certain other categorization, as which I have discussed earlier, that is transport, relating to transport and communications, the roads, the railways, airports, seaports, dockyards, bus depots, transmission and communication lines, all that. And then it is also, and as you can see in these drawings, in these slides, the symbols and the color schemes are all given. Each use represents a color, or and it is given in in these slides. So and the next URDPFI use zones we see. So we see that the next use zones like agriculture areas, then or the croplands, then poultry and dairy farming. There are brick kilns, maybe. Then there are mining areas. So those are these which are the primary sector, or what we call as primary sector activities. So that we have, sometimes we have the stone quarries. So these are the zones which have been, which um, I had discussed. So URDPFI has given symbols. So in a map, we denote the land utilization through these symbols. That means denote all those areas, all those components, or the lands which have been put to various uses are denoted by various symbols and colors, and that is given in these slides. The next category, as I said, is apart from agriculture, is the open area zones. That means the recreation area. If there is any green buffer, then protective zones, eco-sensitive zones, maybe the floodplains of the rivers, or the wetlands, if there are any wetlands. So earmarked, identified wetlands. So those are all eco-sensitive zones. Then if there are any special recreation zone, then reserve forests, sanctuaries. So all that is earmarked through various notations. And so then next we come to the, apart from all these settlements, open areas, all that, we have also the special area zones. There may be zones which are heritage and conservation areas. There may be scenic value areas. There can be an ecotourism zone. So these are all special areas. There can be defense. There can be cantonment areas for then government restricted area, or the defense, for defense purposes. Then there are so therefore these are the also the components or the areas for which the land is used in the region. So dear students, today we have learnt the how we have defined the region, and what is the scale of the region, the interdependence and linkages between the city and the region, and what are the what is and about the land utilization in the region. Thank you.